Bum bum bum. My brain gamer is the first one. He is the first one in the chat room. Hey everybody, welcome back to Fan Help. This is what I call Art Tips Fan Help. This is where fans say, Rob, I need help. And this piece is from show favorite Darth Andrew. Darth Andrew sent me an email about a week ago or so, and he says, hello Rob, I've been trying to color this Batman piece for more than a month. Need some help with finding a color palette. I'm trying to use colors from the comics, but I keep making it too dark. I'd appreciate it if you could help me when you got the time. Alright, so I just opened this right before. Haven't even looked at it. So let's just take a look at the file now. We can see Darth Andrew's been paying good attention. Good attention to the show because he's got a pretty clean file set up here. Everyone can learn. He's got pretty clean layers going on here. And he's even got a desat set up so you can kind of see what this looks like from a desaturated standpoint. Imagine he's got a little reference art here. Maybe this is some reference. Oh look, he's got some reference. Let's use this as the basic lighting reference so I don't have to pick anything, right? I'm going to go ahead and do a few things first. So let's just go ahead and enlarge his reference. And take a little bit of look here. When studying reference, a couple things you should definitely be doing. One, check the values. So when you look at the values, all you're looking at is the basic lighting. So you have global lighting and local lighting. Global lighting is the lighting the universe is giving off, the world. Tone of the sky, basically color of the earth, time of day is what I like to call it. If it's outside, if it's inside, it would be the lighting in the room, the overall lighting of the room. Local color, that's global color. Local color would be anything that's bouncing off the character. So let's say if you're outside in this case, the global color would be sort of this bluish, cool color scheme set off by the time of day. If he was indoors, it's whatever the basic coloring of the lights could be. It could be a warm light, it could be a cool light, depends on where he's at. The local color would be what he's right next to. So in this case, he's got some lights, some warmer windows down here, or even some of these little backlights that are bouncing off him, creating this bounced color. This is what we call global color. I would say that the colorist who initially did this could have maybe even taken it a step further, right? And sampled some of this green color and done a secondary light where you could probably go in here and see. It could have started to create. Modify contract. I'll do a quick contract. No shit. I hate when I do that. I'll contract that one more time. And then a secondary bounce. See how that pops him right forward? While also tying him into the background. The thing with that is you got to kind of make certain you got enough. You don't want to go too thick here. I mean, I like some bold, thick lines. Not everyone likes it. You just want to make certain that these lines are a little bit more strengthened in that instance. So that, the global color, you can see this sort of cool coloring that's all over Batman, is not because his costume is cool, although in this case it happens to be. It's because the global coloration is a cool bluish, sort of greenish color. And then The local coloration is this warm here. Could also be an additional green if you wanted to kind of step into that a little bit. There's different things you can do. All depends on the timing. Typically, in most comics these days, they tend to just go 1 and 2 because of time. Because of time. Now, how do we take this and apply it into Darth's art? So I'm going to just take this right here. Maybe we'll duplicate. Oh, son of a bitch! I think my scratch disk is. Sometimes Photoshop needs to be. Oh mother! What is going on? We always do this live, right? Okay. Okay, it doesn't want to load that shit in the memory. I don't know why. Sometimes Photoshop just needs to be rebooted. It's been on all night. So I'll just drag this over a new file. Check it out. Check it. Okay. So how do I apply that to this? Couple ways we can do it. One, this looks more to me like basic flats with the background kind of thrown in. So we don't really have some key light sources here. So I'm going to just go ahead and turn this on for a second, right? I know, Photoshop is shy. So first thing I'm going to do is duplicate the background and merge it. Ooh, son of a bitch, that did not work out. I wonder why. Oh, okay, I see. I didn't duplicate the background. Huh. If you duplicate it, that's interesting. Control G, duplicate, turn that off. See, Darth, this is where I don't understand. I'm just go ahead and merge that. He's got some gradient maps going on. I don't know how they work right now, so I'm not going to fight that. There. Do a little file cleanup, and all I'm doing is just making a flattened copy of his background. It's sometimes, Photoshop doesn't want to cooperate, and he's locked the flats, which is not a bad idea. But we're gonna come here. I just don't want to see all that stuff. So something else is. What else is locked in here? What else, motherfucker, is locked in here that I can't see? This is where. There. It's another copy of the flats. See, folks, I tried to be really efficient, and it wouldn't let me. Okay. So we have a value and a hue issue here. Hey Felix, we're doing fan art help coloring, so you'll see when I post the video. Okay. Some key differences between this, his setup, and the reference. Right. One, from a hue perspective, there isn't much blue in the background here compared to here. Two, there's no warm lighting here as opposed to here. He actually has this. The reference has some warm lighting, yellow with an orange. Here it's all white. And then two, there's no shadows and stuff going on. So some key lights, some global light sources. So first things first, I'm gonna just make a duplicate here, and I'm gonna turn the resolution down to 100. Why? Because that's when I make my color roughies. I make my color roughies at about 100 dpi. So I can move pretty quickly. I have to move pretty quickly here with this. So if I come here and just quickly multiply 40%. And he's got his flats, which we need to unlock. All right. I'm going to come here and just quickly block in. Now, you got to remember, I'll explain to you, there's a difference, like, this is a hard shade I'm doing, or I'm just kind of blocking in some light sources with a hard shade. The idea that there's going to be an underlight and a backlight. But when they lay down the global lighting, it tends to get airbrushed in. It's softer. It's not really a hard cell shade look. So in this case, if like I'm like, hey, I want this to be like softer, when I go to do the final art, all you gotta do is use it as a reference, right? Is when you make your little lasso selections, you just say, oh, I wanna do it like this. Pretend I'm looking at my reference for the lighting. I can make my selections, right? And then just airbrush in, right? And I can soften the sides where the fall off would be. Okay? So I covered that. But for the sake of argument, fuck, I'll just do it this way. I'm afraid if I shorthand too much, people are going to be like, I don't know how to do it the other way, which I understand. So it's going to be a little stronger. Now this is pretty dark, folks. I mean, I can already look at it and say, yeah, it's got a lot of dark stuff going on. Darkness, you know. Now you can see that fall off is too harsh around the legs. We just airbrush that out a little bit. Right? And if you curve around, you can create a little volume too, motherfuckers. Look at that shit. Right? And you can just unselect and add a little soft. Right up here. We don't want to put a lot of focus on his crotch, but I mean, some of us might. Maybe a little back crotch. Alright, I don't want to take forever here, folks. So, you get the idea, right? Okay. I don't need a lot of this value stuff when I'm working now because I do it all up in my head. You know, I did it the hard way for the longest time, so I see it when I'm working. Okay? So you all should be doing it the hard way as well, until you get a good hang of it. A couple things I also noticed from his background, the reference. We're going to add some more hotspots here. Well, first let's just work on some key lighting. So let's go here and add, I'm just going to work from a value perspective. And pretend that this back thing is going to spill onto the... Right. So this right here I'm going to use as the bat symbol, right? Sort of kind of reflecting, bouncing light down this way. It's not really a good example, but you kind of get the idea. Other thing too is to come in here, and these windows and the reference and stuff like this are way darker. The buildings are way darker. They actually have more shadows built into them for good reason, so the windows pop out more. So, like, even like all of this stuff right here, I would go so far as to say that all these buildings should be like black with just the windows popping out. See, like, I'll just fill this shit in right here and just be like, boom, 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 boom. So you see, like that. And it makes everything look more solid too, right? So, and then I think right here it can be a little bit more, got some more fallout there. This needs to be, there's just, you don't, with Batman backgrounds, you want a lot of the sort of spooky stuff. The monolithic towers, right? Rising up from the what have you. And then we can carve out some of those key shadows just to kind of like add some ominousness. And then I'm just going to go here quickly and try to quickly airbrush in. Some global lighting. Obviously a little. See, when I'm working like with my color roughies, I'm working pretty fast and I don't let it be a reflection of my final rendering technique, like with the lasso tool. I try to just let it be more getting the tone of the piece down. So I might push it a little further in some areas here than I normally would, but I'm interested in mood only. This is also why I don't color other people's art, generally speaking, because I don't like fixing people's art. You know, like it's just my thing. I prefer not to. I have enough time fixing my own art, but I do like helping. So with you guys, so it's all good from here. So I think from that standpoint, we already got. Like if we take this and we'll group that, we could see the initial to a bit more Batman-y, right? Now you're thinking, but that's black and white, Rob. You know, that doesn't really help the lighting. It's color roughy. You can already see one looks like Batman and the other one looks like a dude pretending to be Batman. So next thing I would do is start to bring a bit more of the hue in. The hue's the color, right? And we got sort of this drab kind of thing going on back here. So I'm going to punch up some of the background a little bit. This kind of follows the modern DC Jim Lee kind of Scott Williams Wildstorm era of DC, more than say like the animated series. So it's got a little bit more blue in the background. It's also got this warmer. I'm not going to set that to an overlay. I'm going to do that. Oh, let's try a hard light. Linear. Multiply. No. Let me see which way I want to go with that. Let's go back down to linear. Turn that down just a little bit. I'm just going to quickly we're doing this live, right? So that is not going to work. I don't want to go too saturated. I'm just trying to base off the reference, right? And then, one second, folks, I gotta clear my throat. Okay. So then looking at that, let me kind of work. When I start doing a color roughie, let me tell you the ways I go about it. I try to get all the exterior light sources worked out before I light the character. I don't light the character first and then light the background. I light the background first and then light the character to the background. So this process is a little bit backwards. What I would normally do, we'll take Batman, and is this. I would do this, and then all I would do is take Batman, in this case, and just sort of make him neutrally dark. So he's sort of generically dark, and I would light the background. This is how I generally do this. And this is so I know where to put in where the light sources are going to be coming from as I'm working. Thing to note too about the background is on the initial references it has more clouds in the sky than darkness, so something to think about there. Like it's not as what time am I at here? 20 minutes in, so let's just quickly, I gotta move this up, folks. Gotta move this forward. And then we can just these are not the values I would go for, or the hue. The problem is I'm not a fan of this color scheme. So if I were working, it's not quite how I would do this at all in terms of colors I'm picking or the kind of reference I'm going for here. So I'm trying to do this and maintain a bit of the initial spirit, you know. It's not quite. So, I mean, it's definitely not how I would. Ah, fuck, I'll just do a normal. Sometimes you just gotta normally paint this shit. So this is, you know, a pretty rudimentary explanation. I would start all over with the colors. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not that. It's like a basic lighting issue. Like, I can't come in here and solve all the color problems overnight. What I can do is say that the colors aren't inherently, like, I'll be honest, you know, the colors aren't bad. It's not what I would do. But I just think that you have to globally light the character and then locally light the character. That's kind of the bigger. One second, folks. Fuck. Haven't talked much today. Let me drink something here. So in working this out, do I like green, yellow, and blue as a color scheme? Not particularly. You know, like if I had a, let me see. Batman's tricky, dude. Guys, I'll be honest. A lot of Batman stuff, like people are like, oh, I like the, the animated series or whatever else. I don't know. Like for me, Batman can be in black. It was better, probably best in black and white. Like perfectly honest with you. But it's not really for me to, not the case here to tell someone, oh, hey, you should do the whole thing in black and white. Like if you went animated series with this, right? Give me a second, folks. Felix, you missed the first part of the conversation. I'm not going to repeat myself. So you guys have to wait to watch it. But I don't know. Greens don't mean anything to me. I'm not getting this conversation right now, folks. So everyone means well, but I have to look at, you're being, sometimes when you're in an art department, an art director will hand you a piece to fix, and you can't go and change the fundamental direction. You have to take what was handed to you and actually accomplish the task. And whether I would do it a certain way or not is irrelevant. The real trick is to be able to kind of look at what you're trying to do and accomplishing that. So I would be able to hand this back to an artist, and say, kind of more like, if you're going for this look, this is the way you should go. You have to learn, folks, when you're making artwork for, even in comics, although you are working for an editor, half the time, I'd say, okay, 80% of the time, you're kind of drawing for yourself. You got a lot of leeway. Now, if it's a fan art piece, you got 100% leeway. You're doing everything you want to do for yourself. When you're working in comics, I'd say it's definitely close to 60 to 80%, depending on who you're working with. It's still personal preference. When you, in retail, like in t-shirts or in movies or something like that, right? And somewhere where the work is going to be commercially reproduced for mass market, you got 0% for yourself. For you, the enjoyment or the thing you get out of it is really the execution, having executed, right? So when you're working on, say, a Transformers movie, like right now, if you're working on a Transformers movie, you don't get to change the film. You know what I mean? You don't even get to change the tone of the scene. The scene has a tone, and it's your job as a visual effects artist to execute that tone the best you can to fulfill the director's vision, even if you 100% disagree with it. So in that sense, in that state of mind, how do you execute at a level which you can also be proud of? And how do you fix things without changing their vision? That's when you have to come back to technique. And very basic technique I'm talking about here is global lighting and local lighting. setting up your global light source, which is, again, the time of day, or the overall color of a room if we're inside, and then the local lighting, or the local lighting, which is bounce lights. In this case, this is some dodge and burn bullshit here. The bad signal, which is in the background, and if I could, some of the windows that are back there. The thing is this is really like a guide, and I have to be careful that I don't just sit here and spend another 2 hours doing Darth's work for him. There's some pressure points here to worry about. Like, one, in the initial concept, there's some blue in Batman's costume. Here he has gray. So he may want to think about, throwing in some of that blue into, or even changing around some of the flats, so that when you get to these areas where it gets super dark, you actually have some blue in there. Another thing he needs to think about, right, is the initial reference piece that he had, right? Something else. This is a little trick to comic book art, okay? You see these blacks everywhere, okay? These are inks, right? Like, this is inked, this is inked. So let me show you what this looks like. If we go here, and let's here, and here, we can almost remove everything. Let's go see what the line art looks like, right? It's not the best representation of this, but it's pretty close. I'm going to destroy some of the line art. But you can kind of get a sense here. This character is inked heavily. And so what that means is that Darth is trying to fill in some of those shadows using just color. When what he's going to have to do, is actually add some real shadows into the piece. Either digitally or when he lays down his art. Otherwise, it's going to definitely have a cell shaded like look. And that will add additional weight and give you places to pop out things. Which means that the flats for these boots and stuff, these can be dark blues. This is just a dark blue for the boot. And then this is like a gray and versus gray and gray. And then when he adds black, see, like, it's that color in the boot is what's adding a little bit more of the if this were here, it would look more like that. See, you would see a little bit more of it pretty quickly, so that when you come to do some global light sourcing and you do a little fall off here, a little airbrush, it sort of blends those edges together because the solid blacks are already there. So that's also an inherent issue. And that's in the drawing. And, from a color standpoint, there's not much Senior Rob can do about that at this point. Sort of, changing the fundamental drawing, which you kind of can't do. I don't like that yellow. It's not yellow. It's got a soft core spot. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that. This is not rocket science. This is just sometimes I have to get my head around. In the art department, sometimes I got like an hour or two, just kind of just sit down and put on some music and kind of work this out a little bit. So I think that I would change. See this right here? You'd have probably want to make. It's hard. If you make too many of these like bounce lights, you can end up making a giant fucking rainbow out of everything. So if I was to come here and say, hey, this cape is being, it's going to have some of this bounce light from here, airbrush rod. It's fine, but you just got to like be careful you're not. It's got a little blue and a little green. It's not just green. It's got some darker blue, teals going on in there. And then, you know, so things aren't just green. Like, it gets into color theory, and it's a whole nother level of conversation. You know, gotta be a little careful of that. And whenever you're laying down light sources, you also want to improve, you know, build upon the shapes you've been given. But honestly, so I want to say honestly, you just gotta be a little careful. When I do color reviews, I tend to just quickly add some these little rim glow things to cover my bounce light. Doesn't mean I'm going to do a giant glowy Batman. This is also why when I'm doing like color roughies, I don't tend to stream them too much because I don't like to talk much when I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. It is a slightly different situation. Kind of get the idea, right? Kind of get the idea. It's got a ways to go. So, some basic coloring tips on this one, Darth. If he's still not happy with the color scheme, man, I would say this. You know, I really think before everyone starts stepping into making prints and stuff like that, is kind of settle into what you want to do first. If you want to color work, focus on coloring. If you want to draw, focus on drawing. I didn't start coloring my work until 2009, 2010. I mean, I did here and there, but I was bad at it. I had no choice because I just didn't have a budget for colors anymore. And the people paying me were going to fire me if I couldn't produce everything. I really had to sit down and figure out the light sources a few years ago. A couple years ago, I really started to really pay attention to light sources. But only after I knew I had the drawing element of it down. When I look at this drawing, I think, okay, you know, he's put a lot of effort into construction shapes here. But there's just a lot of things that, like, I mean, I would never, like Batman's eyes and the way I would draw, the way, you know, pushing this out, letting the cape come down, learning where to place blacks, and which is shadows are very important to Batman. I don't know. Um, you know, learning maybe to pop things a little bit forward. So at this point, you can be very careful about how you really focusing on the drawing from a black and white standpoint. Really working on improving your drapery and shit here, things in perspective. Probably more like this, So I think from my, from a how to move forward with this drawing, understanding your global light sources and your local light sources, right? It's very key. Giving yourself a color roughie before you start, so you're not trying to figure this all out with the final drawing, I think is very important. Very, very, very important. I don't like to figure this out when everything's drawn. I want to have, when I get to the colors, I'm executing based off my color roughie. So, from the very beginning. As a personal tip to Darth Andrew, to everyone else out there, really learning to focus on your art. I mean, really just focus on the drawing element of it. Like, I'm not a fan of this bat symbol at all. Like, I just don't think it's not what I expect from Batman. Challenge yourself too, right? Challenge yourself. Batman's fun to draw. Everyone loves Batman. Take on some characters that aren't so fun. Because if you get a gig, and you're new, they're gonna hand you shit that sucks. You're gonna be working on Ragman and fucking. You're not gonna get to work on the best. Like, I get why he's doing that, but I mean, it's longer. It's a long, slow process. For spending a month trying to figure out the colors, for me, I get back to the drawing. Like, the drawing should be fucking sick before the colors. The drawing should be like, God damn, I gotta own that. Before anything gets done. And you can do a bit of that lighting before you ever get anywhere. It needs an attitude, it needs an emotion. It needs, yeah, there really is a character named Ragman. It needs, like, just think about it from a t-shirt perspective. It needs, not modern t-shirts. Go back to like the 90s and shit when they actually fucking had to design shit. It needs things to pop forward. It needs attitude, emotion. It needs to say something. It needs to have an impact. Before all the other rendering is even there. If you look at the Dark Knight Returns, a lot of those backgrounds are super loose. There's not a lot to it. But it's impactful. It's very impactful. He was a character in the 80s, Ragman. And Anarchy, all those characters in Arrow just, And if you're trying to go for a sense of him on the watching, what's he doing? Like, if he's trying, is he just posing to look cool? Like, hey, I'm Batman. Or is he like stalking someone? Like, there needs to be an element of what's he doing and trying to make sure that attitude sort of like conveyed in the initial drawing. You can draw through your objects like this building, but shadow the fuck out of them especially with Batman. Batman does pretty good in the shadows, guys. You don't have to, So I would say back the formula with drawing and the lighting and stuff, you know? And don't worry, dude. Don't worry about how long it's taken. You know, what's more important is that you're actually improving. So there you go, folks. So let's go ahead and some basic art tips. I hope that helped. I don't know, guys. You know, sometimes I would have been like, every now and then, even when I had a good instructor in college, there weren't many, but I had a couple. They'd give you some advice, and you kind of would be like, I don't know. Same with an art director. Like he'd give you some advice, or she would give you some advice, and you'd be like, I don't know if that quite solved this particular problem. I think the more important thing is to put you in the mindset to be able to execute where you need to go, you know? And if you're dead set on coloring this piece, then you need to really focus on your global light sources and your local light sources. And using your reference, see it's got these oranges that go into a cream and so forth and so forth. That's the bounce light. Also recognize too that a lot of this right here is being done in the inks and the actual drawing. A lot of the work's already done for the colorist when they come in on this. It's not being made up by the colorist. Thing to remember in comics are the colorists get paid far less than the pencilers. So they're not doing half the work, they're doing a quarter of the work. Unless they really love the art and they're fucking throwing down, but they get paid in bulk. The penciler, the artist the penciler is the only person working on one thing on a comic book. Everyone else is working on multiple things. Writers writing multiple books. Colorists coloring multiple books. The inkers inking multiple books. So if you're having to make up the whole piece in color, you should be thinking like, as a colorist, you would not be happy because you'd be paid like, say you're getting paid $100 and the person who drew it's getting paid $500, and then you're making up their art for them. Doesn't make much sense. That's why when I first started out, I tried to split all the money up in half with my colorists because I wanted him to do a specific amount of extra work. But he had a life, and he was like, this isn't how it works, Rob. And I'm like, fuck. He's right. He's right. That's not how it works. Rob, would you do a color roughing in Photoshop before you do Copics? You can. I have before. That's why I try to do a lot of similar techniques. The thing with Copics you need to remember is you're not going to be able to do airbrushing. These global light sources are very basic when it comes to Copics. The only way to really do it is to either A, use an airbrush or grab color pencils. And so, you know, you're not going to get a full, you know, airbrushed. When I say airbrush, this soft shaded things that fall back, you're not going to get that with Copics because they can only blend so much. It can't do little gradients. The only way to get that is to get an airbrush out or to do a color pencil. And personally speaking, I just render the character to the paper, basically, when I'm doing Copics. That's how I do it. I think about it to the paper, using the paper as a lighting source. And I try not to overdo too much. So you can see that in some other pieces I've done. If we go to my DeviantArt gallery, let's go into here, type in like case in point. This Spider-Man is Copic markers. This whole background is Photoshop. But you can see I just sort of lit, this is the actual Copics by themselves. I lit him to the paper and then went back. I had to relight all this stuff around him. So when it comes to just Copics on paper, I just tend to light it to the paper and not get too crazy with trying to do global rendering, you know. It's kind of irrelevant. So don't overthink Copic markers, you know, like, see this? You know, I wouldn't do all these little splats now, but the rendering is just fine. You know, people get very happy with that. Like this was the Copic version of the Daredevil, you know, and I tried to do some background stuff with it here. This is a few years ago. But once I cut them out, I took all that out, fixed them up, and then this is a digital background. You can see what you can do more with that. This was a Batman piece I colored a while back based off pencils, but a lot of the lightings that I did here was, I mean, this is years ago, was done in the pencils, you know. So I think this has a lot of drawing elements, like. But I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna wrap it on this. In an art department, when I would come back and say, you know, fundamentally, your art needs to be fixed, and this can pop out here. No artist wants to feel like they have to start back over. But I'm gonna tell you something. I make Brandon start over. I make him do the same thing over and over and over again until, and every time it has to be better. He has to continue to build the construction, pop things out, and increase. This has an attitude problem. Like he's drawn all the things. He's definitely putting forth the effort to make these things three-dimensional, but like the proportions are in a way where I just don't get the power of Batman, you know? I don't fully feel that. And so I think one of the reasons for that is he set up a 3-point perspective here where the feet are going to be big and the head's going to be tiny. And that can come off very, although perspectively accurate, from a composition standpoint, not as engaging, you know? And if we take something where Batman's more like this, and he's got like 2 batarang things in his hands, and this is, the cape is bowling over, and he's on like a gargoyle, then I just think that that attitude has fundamentally, even this basic silhouette, has fundamentally altered the attitude of the character. You know, and you know, we could do something where it's a heavy building right here and there's just this little sliver. Or you could, this could all be sky and these can be like little things. And I guess if you needed that fucking bad signal, I'm not a big fan of putting the bad signal. I don't know, you know, like that's probably the direction I would just start with Batman's attitude. And Batman's sitting back like this would be funnier if it had like a cup of coffee, right? Just there's an action figureness to this that I'm not the biggest fan of. Don't take it personal, guys. It's just you'll see me do it with my own art all the time. I'm like, I don't like the way I did this shit, and that's because there's just a lot of this, like, I'll take this pose and then I'll put this here, and I don't know why that hand is bending. See, his hand is bending in, like it, even if he was doing that, this would move into perspective and it would come out, and then you'd have those bad things there. And he has way too much groin area down there. So, I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. Alright, everybody. Hopefully that was confusing enough for you all. Alright, Darth, I look forward to seeing future progress. Thanks for everybody for hanging out with me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm going to be back on in a little bit with Ashley. We're going to have a conversation. She wants to have a conversation about something that I think everyone should hear. And then I'm going to be streaming tonight. Lots of drawing coming over the next day or two. Okay? Lots of drawing, lots of streaming. You're going to see notices coming out the fucking wahoo just because we got a lot of work to do. I just completed another IDW cover, so you guys will see that whenever they post them. And we'll talk to everyone soon. All right, everybody. Talk later. Bye. Oh, look at that. It's not going to... It's always something. Come on, exit video. Exit video. It worked.